Time now for another edition of Hey Bobby with Senior VP of the Cleveland Guardians, Bob DiBiasio, with us on 93.5, 1590 WAKR, and of course brought to you by Nika IBEW. Bobby, I thought we'd go into the dugout a little bit. You know these two gentlemen pretty darn well when we talk about Terry Francona and Carl Willis, and Carl has spent a lot of his professional career in an Indian/Guardians dugout, and I know Tito leans on him a whole lot, and their relationship is pretty special. And again, you talk about a team that relies and leans on the pitchers. This relationship is a must when you talk about our team. I thought maybe you could talk about these two a little bit.
No question, Ray. Good morning. It's vitally important that the skipper of your baseball team and the pitching coach, have a wonderful working relationship. It's the most important connection, I think, among coaching staffs. You have coaches that have specific duties, of course, but the manager gets involved more with the pitchers than he does with the hitters or positioning the position players out on the field, things of that nature, because when you go to your bullpen, and we know Tito is an expert at matchups and competing once it gets into the bullpen stages of a baseball game. We talk about Tito and Carl Willis, and it's all about continuity and stability, which is the culture that Paul Dolan creates at our Guardians franchise, as does Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff. As you said, it's the 6th season of those two being together. It's the 13th year that Carl Willis has been a member of our franchise as the pitching coach. He's been a pitching coach in the big leagues for 20 years, just like Tito is 20 plus seasons as a skipper. So you talk about experience and continuity and stability. Carl had 5 Cy Young Award winners in his tenure, which is pretty cool. 3 with us, CC, Cliff Lee, Shane Bieber, but Rick Porcello with Boston when he was their pitching coach, Felix Hernandez when he was the pitching coach in Seattle. He also won 2 World Series, one in '84 with the Tigers, and again in I think it was '91 with the Minnesota Twins. So had a good big league career, not stellar, but a good solid big league career. So didn't quite get to 10 years, but a 9-year career as a pitcher is not bad. 4 different clubs, Red Sox, White Sox, in addition to the other 2. So their relationship connected at the hip. The dialogue has to be free flowing. You have to be able to say what's on your mind and not hurt people's feelings. And that's part of an effective coaching staff.
Bobby, I know you're not in the dugout with these two, so it's not fair for me to ask you a question about their conversations, but I imagine that Tito really leans on Carl as the game unfolds, as far as how this guy looks. How did he look in warm-ups? What do you think about right now? Because Carl obviously has been there, done that on the mound. I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about the role that Carl has with Tito on game day.
Well, it's constant chatter, without question, from the first pitch. As you said, when they come in from the bullpen, I think the first person that Carl will talk to is Tito, because he's out there with the starting pitcher getting ready for the game. And the first thing is, how did he look? How's he feel? How many, especially with 3 rookies in our starting rotation right now, how they sit and talk about managing innings. These kids have never pitched this kind of intensity at this much in their careers. They're going to probably, certainly Logan Allen Tanner Bybee are going to throw more innings than they ever have in their life, especially in this type of intensity at the big league level. So how do you manage that? How do you monitor that? Trying to win, but save a young man's arm. Constant conversation. And then pitch selection, they'll talk to the catcher. You don't try to do too much with a pitcher when he comes back in the dugout. You don't want to fill his head with too much. It's more of a talking to the catcher and the flow of the game and the pitch selection and how strong, where we need to attack certain hitters, just reinforce the game plan.
Once the pitchers, and like you said, we got 3 rookies in a rotation right now. Once these pitchers get to the big league club, and you and I often talk about development all the way up through the system, when they get to Carl Willis at the Major League Baseball level, I don't want to say they're a finished product, but they're pretty far along, I imagine, in their development to get to the big club. Carl does then what? Does he sand it down a little bit? Maybe educate us on his role, especially when you're talking about a lot of young guys now coming into our rotation.
Well, Carl's in constant contact with our pitching coaches and assistant pitching coaches at AA and AAA, just wanting to make sure to hear from them the development of some young men that he watched in spring training and wants to keep an eye on. And it's also important that the pitching coach sends a message to those kids that he's watching. That the big guy up in Cleveland, is concerned about you, is curious about you, checking in on you. And so I think that is part of the whole process, so that when a young man does come up, he's just not somebody new. But with us, the way we are so organized and analytical in our approach in spring training, we go through the list of pitchers that Carl needs to work with, because there's an outside chance that these guys, because we'll probably go through 13 or more pitchers during, we won't get lucky. Very rarely do you go through a season. We did it, I don't know how many years ago, where we only use 5 starters, that everybody's healthy and everybody gets their 30 starts. And it's just remarkable. That doesn't happen very often. So Carl needs to understand the list of 13 to 15 that he might be even more that he's going to be involved with. And that begins in spring training. So fine tuning a kid, but also, just being that fatherly type that, keeps an eye on them, make sure their confidence is high. But it's pretty interesting how you go about wanting to win, but you have to protect the arms as well.
Senior VP with the Cleveland Guardians, Bob DiBiasio with us. Hey, Bobby, and I've been out there in spring training a lot of times seeing Tito, and he'll say, hey, we need 40 players to win this whole doggone thing. It's just not 24 or 25. Bobby, changing gears a little bit, I know a subject that's really near and dear to you. You spent a lot of time on it, and that's Cleveland Guardians charities. And I thought we could take a moment to wrap up this week's show and talk about the outreach from the organization, how important that is to the Guardians, the Dolan family, and such.
Yeah, we're so very fortunate that started with Larry and Eva Dolan and Paul and Karen as the stewards of the franchise now. Their hearts are in Cleveland and wanting to make sure we make an impact on the lives of the youngsters in our town that first and foremost that are underserved, and then to a broader group to help where we can. That's the one thing that I find just so very rewarding and satisfying working for Paul. He's constantly talking to the powers of Cleveland, especially in the community, and asking the question, where can we help? We have our own focus that we truly believe we're really the only ones who will put a heavy emphasis on the game of baseball and the game of softball, and helping young people, the boys and girls, through the game of baseball and softball, learn all the important life lesson skills: health and wellness, sportsmanship, discipline, how to be a good teammate, how to compete. It's a word that gets tossed around sometimes negatively, but a healthy sense of competition in the right way is very important for the growth and development of a young person. That you need to deal with failure to learn how to succeed. But it really is focused on the discipline, sportsmanship, health and wellness. And we do it through the game that we love and know. That's where our focus is with our Play Ball CLE, the Play Ball CLE program, and another RBI program, and a number of others that we have, our connection with the Boys and Girls Clubs. We established Cleveland Guardians Charities way back when in 1989, and I think we've done a terrific job. Penny Forster in our group, Rafi Collins runs all our youth baseball, all the people that are involved, Rebecca Kodish, who is the executive director of Guardians Charities. I've been president of Guardians Charities since its inception in 1989, and just so proud of our staff. And again, Ray, the key element is asking the question, where can we help? And that comes from the top of our ownership group. And it's really rewarding to work for an organization that cares about its community.
Like we say, it's more than baseball. And that's why I wanted to bring that up this week with the Guardians and Cleveland Guardians Charities. Well, that puts a lid on it again. Another edition of Hey Bobby with Senior VP of the Cleveland Guardians, Bob DiBiasio, joins us each week here at WAKR, WAKR.net. Bobby, as always, my friend, thank you for carving out some time with us. We'll reconnect again next week. Again, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Ray. Go Guardians.